not the time of revenge or retribution. This is a time for inclusion and reconciliation.
International concern over Muslim Brotherhood arrests in Egypt. Rebel crackdown. DR Congo launches an offensive against M23 rebels in the east. And France pledges tough response against Mali Islamists after the killing of a French hostage. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program, East Africa and the European Union are inching closer to an agreement on market access as negotiations enter crucial phase. And Manchester City takes a beating at a pre-season friendly match in South Africa. The United States Deputy Secretary of State William Burns met Egypt's interim President Adli Mansour in Cairo Monday. Now, the visit is an attempt to bridge the divide in the country following the ousting of President Mohamed Morsi. Burns is the first senior U.S. official to visit Egypt since the ouster of President Morsi. However, his visit was snubbed by both Islamists and their opponents. The U.S. State Department said Burns would meet civil society groups as well as government officials. But the Islamist Noor Party and the Tamarud anti-Morsi protest movement both said they had turned down his invitation. Morsi's opponents accused the U.S. of backing Morsi, while the Muslim Brotherhood suspects the U.S. involvement in his removal. Well, meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has expressed concern over reports of the ongoing crackdown of Muslim Brotherhood leaders. And speaking in Paris, the UN chief asked the new administration in Cairo to embrace all groups to resolve the political crisis.
I'm very much troubled that there was a report that they have arrested more than 200 senior officials of Muslim Brotherhood. This is not the time of revenge or retribution. This is a time for inclusion and reconciliation. The United Nations will continue to work with the Egyptian people. This is a dialogue among Egyptian people. Their future should be decided by Egyptian people. Yes.
And prior to the massive rallies expected Monday to support former President Morsi, Egypt's defense minister released a statement stating that the military is not interested in politics, but it is concerned about public opinion. CCTV's Adel Mahroui tells us more.
For the first time since Morsi's oust, Egypt's defense ministry broadcasted a speech by Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. It comes just one day ahead of a planned pro-Morsi rally on Monday. Al-Sisi gave an insight to the public of what happened behind the scenes between him and President Morsi.
I have always given the president honest advice. If you as a ruler couldn't make opponents neutral, then you leave power. You have entered a conflict with justice and a conflict with media, the police, the public, and even a conflict with the armed forces.
Morsi's supporters have been criticizing El-Sisi. At the same time, they called the army to stand beside them. Although unspoken of, the speech was mainly directed to the armed force generals to convey unity.
I swore that we were not greedy and will not seek anything, and you will see that. All we want is our country Egypt to be the best globally. We do not compromise. We talk to the former president, but we are obliged to obey the Egyptian people.
These words comes with the official appointment of Mohammed al-Baradei as Egypt's interim vice president for foreign affairs.
I support al-Baradei for vice president. He was the first flame that ignited the revolution. He was the first to stand against Mubarak in 25th of January, and in June 30th, he was the fuel. He said we must take the streets.
I don't think he'll do good for the country. He's not one of us, always abroad. Baradei doesn't understand the regular people's feelings, neither him nor the Salvation Front. They are not good people.
Al-Baradei's main role will be to earn as much foreign support as possible to the new political transition in Egypt during the ongoing protests rejecting him and the interim president Adli Mansour. Al-Baradei's mission has already gotten the first push as Gulf countries showed unprecedented support to Egypt after Morsi's oust with billions of dollars of promised aid. Adel Al-Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Well, let's get an analysis on this situation, and we are joined live by Ahmed Sami, a political researcher at the Ahram Center for Strategic Studies in Cairo. Thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Now, the United States has not been very clear on its current position in Egypt. Is this perhaps the reason both pro- and anti-Morsi supporters are against the U.S.?
Okay, first I would like to correct that I am working as a political journalist in Al Ahram newspaper here. And I would like to emphasize here that the United States stance was inconstant from the beginning. There was a big debate between the US Parliament and the US administration. The White House first they considered what was happening in Egypt. They condemned what was happening in Egypt as first, and that which angered the anti-Morsi's supporters. But by the time, and there was a big debate in the parliament and in the US, the White House tends to the supporters of the revolution, and they consider what was happening in Egypt as not a coup. And they consider it as a real revolution, and the army is adhered to the people of Egypt. After that, the Muslim Brotherhood or the pro-Morsi's supporters was angered because. By the way, the United States acknowledged that what was happening in Egypt is not a coup, and they urged to form the interim government, to rapid the formation of the government, and to enter to the democratic process.
Ahmed, Egypt now is a rather divided society, though, and the divisions continue over the interim leaders appointed to the cabinet. What is being done, though, to ease the political transition?
In my opinion, I don't think that we cannot do anything now because maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow the government will swear the oath. And it's now in the last steps of the formation of the new interim government. But there is a division from all the parties among this government. What I'd like to emphasize that for me, I found that there is maybe 4 or 5 ministers will be from the National Salvation Front, which is the main opposition movement of the 30th of June revolution, and that we have to give. But on the ground, it's not easy to form the so-called the national unity government because all of the Islamic parties refrain to join this government, this interim government, and that put a pressure for Dr. Beblawi to form this government. So he's not in a smooth formation of government. He have the time is pressing, so he has to form it today or tomorrow at last.
All right, Ahmed Sami, a journalist at the Ahram Center for Strategic Studies in Cairo. Thank you very much for being on Africa Live. Meanwhile, Egypt witnessed political instability in the past 3 years. Images of demonstrations, protests and violence are the headliners globally. But despite these negative pictures, most Egyptians seem to be living a normal life, enjoying their holidays and the festivities of Ramadan. Yasser Hakim takes us to a side of Cairo that is rarely covered by the media.
The daily demonstrations are usually confined in certain areas not felt across the large 20 million population of Cairo. Stepping out of Tahrir Square or Nasr City, and Cairo would be full of diversity and multiple activities for all tastes. You can safely go sightseeing at the Grand Pyramids, visit the numerous museums, Pharaonic, Coptic and Islamic, have a dip in the water, or just take a walk on the River Nile like many couples do. At sunset, you take a romantic boat ride on the Nile, which only costs $5, but which will be worth much more in your memories. But when the night sets in, that's when all the action begins.
It's great here. Come join us.
We're Egyptians. We love to have fun and enjoy our time. We go out every night.
If you visit popular areas like the Khan Khalili Bazaar at 2 in the morning, you will find it buzzing with men, women, families and tourists. They are shopping, eating and singing till the early morning hours, feeling totally secure.
It's so interesting, funny, and we found a lot of things they are bought from China, and lots of things made in China.
Basically, it's a celebration time. They are celebrating. They are not like everybody's happy over here. Everyone's like enjoying, celebrating their festival, happy. And something happened, just back down. President back down. So public is happy for them.
Enjoying the nightlife or having a drink in the street after midnight is a scene rarely found in any city around the world, but normal in Cairo, known as the city that never sleeps.
There were security issues after the 2011 revolution, but now that is all gone and Egyptians are living normally. Everywhere there's a carnival atmosphere and even tourists are beginning to return, slowly but improving.
One reason for the absence of tourists is the stereotype image projected by the international media of a country engulfed in protests. But Lou has a different message to everyone.
Don't listen to what people say it's dangerous in Egypt or anything like that. It really isn't. Like after coming here, you realize it really isn't. It's safe, it's completely great. Come here. Egypt needs tourists, and I think now is the perfect time to come.
Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
All right, we'll take a short break here on Africa Live, but still ahead on the program. Rebel crackdown. DR Congo launches an offensive against M23 rebels in the east. And France pledges tough response against Mali Islamists after the killing of a French hostage. Heavy fighting has erupted between government troops and rebels near the eastern city of Goma in the DR Congo. The army claims to have killed more than 100 M23 fighters. The M23 rebel group says it was attacked with artillery, tanks and helicopter gunships. CCTV's Hilary Ayesiga has that story.
It looks abandoned, doors locked, the owners fled. But a few residents line the dusty streets of Muja, a small village 5 kilometers out of the regional capital Goma, watching government troops advancing.
I do not understand this decision to start fighting. I would ask them to come here in Nyiragongo and negotiate peace and end this fighting. We innocent people have suffered too much.
Army spokesperson Olivia Amuli says the troops responded after M23 rebels attacked them. Olivia claims more than 100 rebels have been killed.
We have pushed the rebels very far to the point that they can't think about entering Goma because the population is tired. They need to return to normal lives. You see, they have abandoned their homes because there is no peace.
The fighting is reported to have lasted hours with heavy shelling and artillery fire. M23 head of delegation Rene Amandi in Kampala claims the army started the fighting.
They launched a very huge storm with tanks, helicopters and heavy weapons, but until now they are still fighting, you see.
Amandi described the situation as a dirty game, saying the government of Joseph Kabila does not want to sign a ceasefire, but it's opting for war. The M23 warns it has 5,000 well-trained fighters and will defend its positions. But it's urging government negotiators to come back to the table.
What will solve the problem of Congo is not to add weapons to weapons. It's to solve problems of people. They can add and they bring the most sophisticated weapons, but if they don't want to deal with the cause of the problems, it means nothing.
A new UN brigade is being deployed with a mandate to engage armed groups such as the M23. The UN is also to use unarmed drones for surveillance. Despite accusations of who attacked first, the fact that fighting has resumed in this volatile region creates uncertainty and likely to displace more civilians. Hilary Isiga, CCTV, Kampala.
In the meantime, UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo will begin using unarmed drones on a trial basis to monitor its war-torn east. That is according to the head of the peacekeeping operations in the region, that is Chief Hervé Ladsous. While in Paris to attend France's Independence Day celebrations, he said that a deal signed on Friday with an unarmed, unnamed company would enable them get a complete picture of what is happening on the ground. Now, thick forests, rugged terrain and few roads have complicated peacekeepers' efforts to control the area. UN peacekeeping troops have been in eastern Congo for more than a decade, and the UN MONUSCO force is currently 17,000 strong, the largest UN force in the world. But the complex conflict has dragged on, killing millions through violence, famine and disease since the 1990s. Let's get more on the usage of unarmed drones in the DR Congo, and we are joined by CCTV's Stephen Fear in New York. Stephen, it seems the UN is keen on embracing the use of drones in the fight against militants in DRC. Why is this?
Well, as you said, the head of peacekeeping operations over the weekend gave a partial answer to that question, saying that these drones would allow them to get a complete picture of what's going on in that volatile eastern region. Now, as you've reported, this is a trial run for the use of drones, and these are unarmed vehicles. They could receive shipments of these vehicles as early as September. Now, in June, the head of the force said that as rebels are increasing their use of technology, so too must the United Nations. And they plan on using these drones to monitor rebel bases and also logistics depots that have been hard to access because, as you said, of tree cover and also hard to access roadways. And of course, unmanned means not putting any personnel in the line of fire. This is huge incentive for any country that sends peacekeepers to conflict regions around the world.
Well, Stephen, there have been concerns, though, by countries, neighboring countries like Rwanda and Uganda over the use of those unmanned drones in the DRC. Do we know what assurances have been given to these countries now that the drones, as you say, could be deployed as early as September?
Well, you're absolutely right. They have been engaged in some talks with neighboring countries, including Uganda and Rwanda. What's more clear, though, is that there have been some public statements by UN officials about concerns about artillery and personnel crossing between the very porous borders between Rwanda and DRC and Uganda and DRC. Indeed, over the weekend, there were reports of 100 armed men disguised as women crossing from Rwanda into DRC. The hope is that these drones could keep some of these neighboring regions and neighboring countries in check. Now, Rwanda has said, of course, it has sent no artillery and no personnel into DRC. They've also said that it is indeed UN peacekeepers that have been colluding with Hutu leaders whom they hold responsible for the 1994 genocide in that country.
Stephen, this means, though, that they will not be putting personnel in the line of fire. But what does this new strategy, though, mean to the war against rebels in that region?
Well, as your reporter just mentioned, a new thrust of MONUSCO's mission here is this intervention brigade. This idea is a large expansion of what is normally considered the boundaries of UN peacekeeping operations and non-use of force in these zones. So we're likely to see this perhaps as a pattern that the UN could follow in future peacekeeping missions, not only in this region, but also in other conflict zones. Again, we've heard from other force commanders in places like South Sudan and Lebanon that they would like to see the use of this kind of technology, especially in areas where there's a lot of cross-border conflict.
All right, Stephen Fee joining us there from New York. Thank you very much for your insights. Now, the body of French geologist Philippe Verdon has been found in Mali, according to Radio France International. Verdon was taken hostage by Al-Qaeda's North Africa wing in November of 2011. Now, French President François Hollande said in his Bastille Day speech it was possible Verdon died several weeks ago, but that his death was not officially confirmed. And citing a source close to the matter, the RFI said DNA checks showed that the body found in the north of Mali was that of Verdon, and it would be repatriated to France in a couple of days. Al-Qaeda's arm in the Islamic Maghreb said in March it had beheaded Verdon in response to France's military intervention in Mali. François Hollande justified the intervention partly by saying it would prevent northern Mali being used as a launch pad for Islamist attacks in the West, in Africa, and in the west of the region. And to stay with us here on Africa Live, as still ahead on the program. South African children host an early birthday for ailing Nelson Mandela. You're watching Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Now, as Mandela Day approaches, one of Nelson Mandela's grandsons, Zondwa Mandela, says he hopes the global icon will recover enough to spend his birthday at home, but he concedes it is up to the doctors. CCTV's Maria Galang tells us more.
Not just thinking about Nelson Mandela's grandchildren, Zondwa and Zoleka, attended a birthday celebration for the anti-apartheid icon at a school in Johannesburg on Sunday. Addressing the crowd of children aged between 5 and 10 from Bertram Junior School, Zondwa said it was crucial to continue the legacy of his grandfather, who valued education above all else. Zondwa added that he was hoping the former president would be well enough to come home for his 95th birthday on July 18th.
Our intention really is just have a small lunch. If he was there seated with us, I think that would be good enough.
And you hope that he might be home?
We're hoping. Really, it's a medical thing, and we're hoping that through his treatment, he has a speedy recovery.
Zondwa took a photograph of the children during the day-long celebrations, which he said he would bring to his grandfather, also known by his clan name Madiba.
Yeah, so definitely appreciate it. I should be seeing him during the course of the week, and we'll definitely show him the photo.
And how have you been able to talk to him on past visits? Have you been able to show him things like photos?
We've been able to communicate with him, yes, and he responds well to touch and voice.
July 18th is Mandela Day, and people all over the country will be given 67 minutes of their time to help the community in honor of the former president, who is spending his 37th day in hospital in Pretoria for a severe lung infection. On Saturday, former South African President Thabo Mbeki said he was confident his predecessor's health would improve and the alien anti-apartheid hero would be released to recuperate at home. Mandela's wife, Graça Machel, told local ENCA News he was showing signs of improvement. Mandela was elected president of a multiracial South Africa in 1994, 4 years after being released from prison. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Well, let's stay in Southern Africa for the moment and on to Zimbabwe, where the Movement for Democratic Change has gone to court to have an early voting in the country's national election declared invalid. The party claims far more police officers applied to vote than are actually registered. The second day of the voting, meanwhile, has again been characterized by delays. CCTV's Farai Mwakutuya reports.
It was a case of different day, but same script. Hundreds of police officers continue to play the waiting game. Ballot papers yet to reach this polling station so they can cast their votes. The Electoral Commission has acknowledged its shortcomings.
I wish to advise that the printing of ballot papers delayed even beyond our own expectations. We must confess that we underestimated that particular task.
The challenges have raised questions about Zimbabwe's readiness for the polls, which some political parties and SADC had hoped could be delayed by 2 weeks.
It really vindicates the arguments that were being raised by Professor Oshman and Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai that the country is not yet ready for elections. But more importantly, I think it is everything to do with poor funding.
Zimbabwe requires $130 million for the elections and has so far raised only $41 million. As the voting crept along, a legal challenge relating to the number of police voters was being mounted in the courts. The MDC says, according to Ministry of Finance records, there are 44,113 police officers, yet 69,322 applications were filed for the special vote. The party has filed an urgent application in the High Court seeking nullification of the process. A ruling is expected on Wednesday. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.